What's going on there, guys? Good afternoon. It's the Earthmaster here on this beautiful Thursday, September 1st, first day of September. Getting into those burr months, right? But not here in California. We're going to be cooking. 2022 is the date. It's about 12:14 p.m. California time. Got a little activity there on Yellowstone National Park still kicking off there with the seismograph stations. Part of an ongoing swarm there in day number 7. The latest quake out here on the Earthquake 3D globe shows some earthquake activity. Looks like off the coast of Morocco region, 2.0 into that area. Let's go ahead and check out the latest activity around the map here. Showing some movement kind of ramping up here along the North American plate and the Pacific plate boundary. That includes well inland into the North American plate around places like Texas, where we've seen a 4.6 earthquake strike just a couple hours ago, right outside of the Pecos, Texas area. Of course, we all know this has been kind of swarming and kicking up in earthquake activity over the past few months, and looks like they had a 4.2 as well just a few minutes prior to this 4.6. So things kind of ramping up out there in the beautiful state of Texas, although not my best area of Texas. I kind of like it more towards the central and eastern. It gets a little bit more greener over there. Not a big fan of the desert. But hey, the desert gets quite a bit of rain, right? At least in the summertime. All right, so got about 7 earthquakes or so within this region. Again, a 4.6, the largest in this sequence of earthquakes. Looking at the satellite view. Now, this is in an area. It's kind of hard to see, but there's quite a bit of older injection oil pumping operations out here. Notice these little squares out here. Those are not beautiful farmhouses with a beautiful family inside out there in the middle of the desert. Those are indeed pumping operations, and there's some newer ones down here as well. Looks like that may be one as well. Kind of looks like a tunnel though into the ground, doesn't it? Kind of an odd looking deal, but I think just because of the reflection and whatnot, I believe that's a pond. Kind of cool looking. I never noticed that before. But looking across here at the landscape, you can see some of these older areas charred into the land, so to speak, and even more so as we get into the area where the 4.6 struck. There's a recent pond with the ongoing injection process, wastewater. So it looks like there's a couple really close nearby as well, some older ones. And this is where all the activity has been striking out here in western Texas. And these earthquakes will continue, excuse me, to get bigger, possibly. But they will be continuing for quite some time. The damage here is already done throughout the land, throughout the area of Texas, Oklahoma region. So when we get a lot of pressure out here along the plate boundaries, and at times, you got to remember the stress that's been built up here to build up the mountains and whatnot. Pressure does increase here inland, right up against the North American craton. It kind of warps and deforms the area, and when you get the pressure inland, we kind of hit those weak spots where the injection wastewater has been injected into the ground there. I'm not going to go over the whole process, but definitely been proven that these earthquakes are man-made, or man-caused, I should say, due to the process there of the oil pumping operations and injection wells and all that good stuff there. So yeah, watch for that. Texas and Oklahoma is probably going to become some major earthquake country here very soon. It kind of already is. Aside from tornadoes, right? All right, let's see some movement outside of Horton, Oklahoma, and the Crowder area. It looks like a couple small microquakes. We did have one earthquake outside of the within the New Madrid zone last night. This one near Dale, Arkansas, 2.6 coming into the area. Overnight, though, we haven't really seen any further activity to the east. Things are just kind of calm over here for now into this area of the states. Looking further down, not a whole lot of renewed activity along the Middle America Trench. We were watching some activity here right against the plate boundary. Got the Caribbean plate here and the Cocos plate, excuse me, right up against here in the subduction zone. That was making some pretty good deep earthquakes there yesterday, but looks like things kind of mellowed out a little bit overnight in that region. Puerto Rico area Santiago area, it looks like, up here in the Dominican Republic. Seen a couple fours kicking up this morning, just looks like 3 or so hours ago. There's a little bit of squeezing kicking up here around this area today, but it also puts the Puerto Rico Trench into view, and that's an area we've got to watch here for some larger scale activity. Puerto Rico area is still seeing a little bit of movement here. Of course, the typical swarming area around the southwestern portion here is very typical. It's in kind of in between these two large subduction zones here. Got the Mariotas Trough and the Puerto Rico Trench up here, kind of squeezing the area depending on where the pressure is coming from. It looks like a little swarm of activity just around the Puerto Rico Trench here. Within the escarpment area, it looks like some threes kicking off here. Doesn't look like a whole lot of deep activity right now around the British Virgin Islands area, but I'm watching that region pretty closely. One earthquake here into the Columbia area. I believe this one here was from last night, a 4.4. That one coming in pretty deep though, 153 kilometers, but kind of an overall sign of definitely some pressure being increased out here in this area. And we've seen that pressure definitely increase along the west coast overnight and still continuing today. You know, aside from this movement out here in Texas, things kind of lighten up out here along the San Andreas Fault. We did see an earthquake strike just off the creeping section of the San Andreas Fault. I call it the creeping because this is almost always in continual movement. There's not a whole lot of locking here, so to speak, as we would see down south and up north as far as the fault systems go. So they call that the creeping section. And we've seen a 4.0 on it. Looks like earlier this morning time frame outside of the Pinnacles area. And this area does see some 3s and 4s, and they can occasionally get some larger ones if portions of the San Andreas Fault here become, you know, kind of locked in this area. But most of the time we get these little 2s and 3s and the occasional 4 up and down this creeping section. But overall sign, folks, of regional pressure along the North American plate here at the plate boundary. Low activity outside of Ukiah as well. Looks like a couple small microquakes just off the Macama fault system here. Kind of a coastline fault system that runs in sync there with the San Andreas Fault. One earthquake outside of Eureka. This one coming in last night, a 3.3 at 26 kilometers deep. Now that is a subduction zone earthquake associated with the Cascadia Megathrust subduction zone area. These deeper earthquakes do kind of give an indicator of what's going on down below, and also as far as regional stress goes. We watched for tremor activity down dip, and ultimately I believe that does play a part in the stress, the further stress built up here in the Cascadia upstream. The Pacific Northwest, a couple small earthquakes out there, but not a big deal. No major swarming to report. Of course, a little activity at Mount Rainier, Mount St. Helens. Not volcanic, just strictly some plate dynamic earthquakes out here in the fault systems around the volcanoes. Let's go down south here a little bit further. You can't miss this one right here. Got to watch. This one came in as a 3-point. I thought this one came in as a 3-pointer. It is at the kind of close to the border, 2.9. Near the Nevada-Oregon border. Now, I was out here a few years ago checking out a pretty large earthquake swarm. It was the Sheldon National Antelope Refuge. And where did it go? Oh, here we go. It looks like they renamed this. It was the Sheldon Antelope, the National Sheldon, I can't remember the exact name, but they included the antelope refuge in there. When I was out there, I didn't see any antelope. But there was a pretty good swarm of activity within this area a few years back. I do have a couple videos on it. I drove out there in the desert, and it took, man, a lot of dirt roads out there to get to this area. And just kind of studying the nature of it. And there's a lot of volcanic activity out here, far as you know, old ancient volcanoes. I've seen a lot of obsidian within this area, and a lot of other volcanic type faults or rocks within this area. And that swarm continued for a month or so, and then it completely stopped. So I'm kind of curious to see if this 2.9 might kick another swarm off up here or not. It might be the only earthquake that we see within this region, but overall still kind of watching this area. And again, when we see these inland earthquakes and also swarms here in the mountain ranges, that's a pretty good sign of some regional pressure increases out here, folks. A lot going on. Right around Tonopah, Nevada, of course, we had that 4-pointer kick up yesterday, right? Let's see here. It looks like they dropped it down there, 3.9. A little bit of downgrading. Keep it under that threshold, right? So 3.9, 3.4, and a couple other smaller quakes overnight, but no major activity there to report right now. Looks like the Mammoth Lakes area, just a couple spotty earthquakes within this region, including a 2.7 in the Yosemite Valley area of California, a 16-kilometer deep earthquake. No major swarms to report at the Long Valley supervolcano. Remember that swarm we had a month or so back? It was pretty intense, but it kind of just died off like I was expecting it to. Ridgecrest area in California, seen a little bit of filling in today and overnight. Of course, this area has seen some large earthquake activity back in July 4th, July 5th, 2019 time frame, I should say. And aftershock sequences there continue for quite a while, but it's been pretty quiet there as far as the last week or so goes. But it looks like we're filling in a little bit. Again, regional pressure does increase areas that have seen, or it does increase some aftershock potential in areas that have seen some larger earthquakes in the recent past. Southern California getting in on that little swarm here again in between this section, these couple sections here of the San Jacinto fault zone. Nothing major going on right now, just a little noticeable increase in the area. No major swarms to report around the southern end of the San Andreas Fault, the plate boundary here, or the Brawley seismic zone. Little activity off into the Mexicali area southward overnight, but haven't really seen a whole lot of large-scale swarming or of that type of matter in recent days in that area. Before we go over to Hawaii, let's not miss out on the Yellowstone area. Looks like they're filling in some of those earthquakes overnight. Good job, USGS, right? Give a round of applause there. They did have a 3.3 kick up overnight, and we're kind of watching. I actually seen that overnight. I can't remember what time it was, 01:33. Wasn't too late last night, but seen that come in, and looks like they've had a little bit of follow-up swarming going on there, outside of the swarming we've seen here over the past 7 days or so. Looks like this is starting to die down a little bit, and a new swarming area along Yellowstone may be taking place. Let's go ahead and check out the overview here of the Yellowstone National Park seismograph stations, and there's the 3-pointer that came in, subsequently followed up by a 2. Let me see here what we got. These earthquakes are kind of variable too in their depths. The 3.3 down there at about 9.6 kilometers. So there's a timestamp 0133, 0136, and if you look over here, 0133, 0136. Now I'm not for sure about these earthquakes up here. They're a little bit prior to that movement. But looking back overnight and this morning, it looks like the earthquake swarm is still continuing. Notice all these little specks here and these little spikes. Those are all localized earthquakes in the vicinity of this seismograph station. Now these little smaller ones there won't show up distantly far as these other graphs go. So these little very small spikes are localized to this region, indicating the epicenters of the small ones are in this area. But notice how the 3-pointers that came in, that was down within this region, notice how those came in very nicely. At least the 3-pointer and the 2.7 showed up pretty much all across the park. And when I look at this map, I kind of like to look at these other stations here and see how they're set up, far as the reading of these earthquakes that show up here across your typical seismograph stations. Like Joseph's Coat didn't pick up anything. So I'm not for sure why this one's so squashed out in terms of receiving the data. Same with the Mirror Lake Plateau. Looks like it may have picked up something, but I'm not for sure why these are tuned to the tune of not picking up anything. The promontory is not operational, but again, you know, it showed up over here around Denny Creek as well, Horse Butte, a little bit up here around the Grayling Creek area. But the further away you get, of course, it's going to look a lot less on the signature. But as far as these local seismograph stations go, they all look operational except for the Joseph's Coat and Mirror Lake Plateau area. Those don't look to be picking up any activity whatsoever, and I'm not for sure why they have them squashed off like that, but that's what they have. That's how they're set up. But as far as earthquake activity continuing, day number 7 for sure of the earthquake swarm. I do consider this a continual earthquake swarm because we haven't seen any days here in the past 7 days where there's been no activity. So earthquake movement continues there at Yellowstone National Park. And most of the swarming is confined right now up in that area. That has seen quite a bit of movement over the last week. And there's more than this, folks. I mean, these guys showing 185 earthquakes just with this separate swarm alone. And we can go back on any given day when it was really going here over the last week and see that there's definitely probably triple this amount as far as the total tally goes. But they are including, I believe they're including all the ones that have taken place down here. There's about 12 of them, including that 3-pointer, 3.3 I should say, that kicked off last night. So 2 swarms there at Yellowstone National Park, and we'll definitely keep an eye on it, watch that pretty closely. Let's see, Cedar, Utah, still kicking up a little bit, up against the mountain ranges there. All right, going on to Alaska. Notice there's not a whole lot of activity. As far as the red circles go, it almost looks like the shifting of the plates here right now, as far as the pressure gradients go, are within the North American plate here, West Coast inland and down through the Caribbean plate and along the Middle America Trench. So it looks like we may be working southward a little bit for a little bit of adjustment within these areas, because Alaska is not showing a whole lot of movement up here. Yeah, we got 35 earthquakes, but they're all pretty much microquakes. Checking out the 2.5 and above, there's only one out there right around the Cook Inlet area, looks like, towards there, or the Strait region. But aside from that, most of these are all microquakes, and there's no major swarming to report at any of the volcanoes currently. Big Island of Hawaii is lighting up a little bit today. Most of the movement around the Pahala area, but we are noticing an increase around Kilauea Volcano, and also Mauna Loa up at top, still showing some activity over the last 24 hours. Overall, definitely seen a little bit of increase out there along the Big Island. And we'll check out the Kilauea Volcano or any updates here that the HVO folks might have here in just a second. Looking at the Western Pacific here, not a whole lot going on through the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench or the Japan Trench or the other trenches here. Mariana Trench, Izu Trench up here. Things are just kind of mellowed out compared to a little bit of activity yesterday. This earthquake movement overnight, a 4.9 in the Japan area, and had some movement last night there around the East China Sea. But things dying off here in this area as far as earthquake activity goes. Kind of looking at that teeter-totter effect tilt its way back south here. It's east and south. Tonga area, this movement here, we had one 4.7 in the Tonga region this morning time frame. This other earthquake that we seen last night, actually late afternoon in the Fiji Islands area, is older. So a lot of older activity across the board here. And when we see that, we tend to watch the West Coast and adjacent areas here along the plates, these little separate plates. The owned fracture zone, this one came in 5.4. Looks like that came in overnight time frame. Excuse me. Kind of up there in the northern areas around the Arabian Sea. 10 kilometers deep. Let's see what else we got. Tremor map last night was pretty good. About 429 epicenters of tremor. mostly into the Vancouver Island ranges and also Northern California. So definitely been seeing some increase in pressure out here over the last week or so, a couple weeks. I noticed the tally count up here kind of filling in this little blink spot as far as the tremor count goes. But we'll see what today's looks like a little bit later on. Quick check at Mount St. Helens volcano. Still seeing a little bit of swarming as noted here. This is the last 2 weeks of activity. Looks like about 75 microquakes on the map here. And these guys do put them on, but it takes them a day or so to figure out exactly the correct magnitude and the location. I like to look at the raw data and see that there's a couple small microquakes here within the last couple hours. And these might be some as well. They're not as localized though. Kind of looks like they're a little bit distant because of the flatness of the earthquake signature. Most localized earthquakes are going to look like this, close to the seismograph station. And yesterday there at Mount St. Helens, a couple other smaller earthquakes and possibly some others in there as well. Definitely one right here. Again, I'm not for sure if there's any rock falls going on up there, if there's any still any snow melt, but you know, sometimes those will show up on the seismograph stations. A look at the HVO, Hawaiian Volcano Observatory data. Looks like Mauna Loa weekly update. We'll go ahead and check that out real quick here. Looks like activity summary: Mauna Loa volcano is not erupting. Rates of seismicity remain slightly elevated above long-term background levels. Other Mauna Loa monitoring data streams such as ground deformation, gas concentrations, and the visual appearance show no significant changes. So we've got about 108 small magnitude earthquakes below the summit and upper elevation flanks of Mauna Loa. The majority of these earthquakes occurred at shallow depths there, about 15 kilometers below sea level. Largest earthquake during this period was a 3.7 below the northwestern flank on the 31st of August. Global positioning system, the GPS measurements show low rates of deformation in the volcano summit region continuing through the past week. So just low rates. Concentrations of the gases there remain stable at both summit and the sulfur cone on the upper southwest rift zone. So not a whole lot of changes, but still we like to watch and monitor those earthquakes that do take place around volcanoes, right? Obviously it's something to watch pretty closely. All right, solar weather activity into the solarham.net site. Notice things are mellowing out quite nicely as far as the flaring that we've seen there over the past 8 days or so. Really had quite a few M flares from 3088, which is now long gone on the other side of the sun. We are getting a little bit of C flare kicking off here, but no more major M flares being produced since that last long duration M flare that blasted off a significant CME from 3088 but was directed away from Earth. Right now, what do we have to deal with? Right now, 3089 is about the only one that harbors potential any flaring, and that's really not even doing anything at the moment either. It just might be producing some crackling there with possibly with that C flare that we've seen listed on the map. But 3089, it looks like they've dropped down here. It does harbor a beta gamma delta class with, well, I don't know if that's correct or not. It is kind of in the green. They may need to update that. Right now they have 3086. Let's see here. I think they got this a little mixed up here in the region, but we can look at the magnetic fields here directly with without all that. I still think this one here about the only credible threat. That's 3089, and these other sunspots, I don't think they're all that potentially active. They are kind of, looks like this one's grown a little bit overnight. Didn't really get a good look at it during the update last night because it was kind of on the far southeastern side of the sun, but looks like things may be starting to grow there from that new sunspot. Notice that is circled right there, and that should be named 3091, correct? I believe. 3090 has been named up here, but this doesn't look like a dandy, does it? So again, most potential threat will be coming from 3089. These guys have a 75% chance of C flare, 25% chance for M flare, and 5% chance for an X flare, which I think is probably about moderate in their forecasting. You know, as far as studying this stuff goes, you know, each area kind of, or each agency or website kind of puts out their own forecast, and I do my own 2 cents in there as well. And it looks like about the correct forecast for the reading. Look at that, that just swapped over. Interesting there. You see that? I know I'm not seeing things because just a minute ago 3086 was lit up in the red. Wonder if we got solarham.net watching us right now. Good possibility. Anyway, we appreciate this website if they are, and I do probably send a little bit of traffic over there because this is my go-to website to check out solar weather. Also use spaceweatherlive.com, which is another cool website to check out when it comes to monitoring the sun and the solar data and whatnot. This one's a little bit more complex in the graphs. Maybe not quite as easy to read as the Solar Ham site, but it is a pretty cool site to check out as well. And of course, they get all their information from the SDOs, the SDO website, which is the official site there. But either way, we appreciate all those folks and their data. But let's see what else we got here, folks. Mauna Loa, or not Mauna Loa, Tau Island here. Let's go ahead and zoom back in here into the American Samoa. Let's see if there's been any updates put out here on the Tau Island volcano in the American Samoa. Of course, they're having that ongoing earthquake swarm. Let's see, it doesn't look like there's been any recent. That was from last night. Let's check out the data here. Still trying to figure out how to access their newly installed seismograph stations. I really haven't had a chance to look at it. Yesterday was pretty crazy, and this is way overblown, but I do like the option of bringing that down a little bit so it's not quite as dramatic looking. But yeah, there's definitely an ongoing earthquake swarm there. Looks like they had a couple more upper 2s, or maybe even looked like upper 2s in the area, and some other smaller earthquakes continuing over the last 24 hours. So this has been ongoing here since about the, oh man, it's been almost a month now, right? About a month of earthquake swarming there at that volcano. No noted changes. No, really don't see any harmonic tremor. Just see quite a few earthquakes, and it's been ongoing for quite a while. Let's see if I can't get a little tally of earthquakes since it first began here for tonight's update. But things still kind of shaking out there around the Tau volcano, American Samoa region. And let's check out the National Data Buoy system. I don't think we got anything out there in event mode. Got a hurricane way out there in the Atlantic. That's one thing, you know, we haven't had any hurricanes out here, which is a little odd. I'm sure these guys are happy about it, but nothing coming into the Gulf or the East Coast, and it's already September, heading towards peak. This could be the year without any landfall for the hurricanes here for the states. And that'd be pretty crazy if it is. So we'll have to watch it. They've just been kind of coming out and then going back out to the Atlantic. Pacific side's been kind of dry as well. We've seen a little bit, but nothing spectacular in terms of any major hurricanes here along the states area. All right, guys, I'm gonna jump off here. Got quite a bit of schoolwork to do once again. Yay! But hey, that's what I signed up for, right? Gotta work the mind muscle, so to speak. All right, guys, stay safe out there, and we will chat at you a little bit later on this evening with tonight's update. Until then, take care and stay safe out there. Again, thanks for joining us, and we appreciate every single one of you folks out there. We'll see you guys a little bit later tonight.